Hi, everyone. Good to see you again. I'm Anne-Marie Green.
I'm Vladimir Dutit. Democrats are intensifying their calls for impeachment after President Trump admitted to discussing Joe Biden with the leader of Ukraine. However, the president argues he never asked Ukraine to investigate Biden or Biden's son. This comes after a U.S. intelligence official filed a whistleblower complaint over the president's July conversation with the Ukrainian leader.
The two will meet this week on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly here in New York. Paula Reid takes a closer look at the fallout.
I said absolutely nothing wrong. It was perfect.
On Sunday, President Trump defended a July phone call with the president of Ukraine, where he discussed former Vice President Joe Biden.
We don't want our people, like Vice President Biden and his son, creating to the corruption already in the Ukraine.
The call has come under scrutiny after a whistleblower's complaint to the intelligence community's inspector general. According to the Wall Street Journal, during the call, Mr. Trump urged the Ukrainian leader 8 times to investigate the Biden family.
There was no quid pro quo. There was nothing.
A claim the Ukrainian foreign minister backed, denying there was any coercion. But Democrats are calling for renewed scrutiny into the Trump administration's recent release of military aid to Ukraine.
There are likely a bunch of different explanations. Political pressure was mounting on the president from Republicans, but obviously the timing of this it looks really terrible.
On Twitter and in statements, the president has been suggesting Biden improperly used his position as vice president to help out his son. In 2016, while vice president, Biden threatened to withhold $1 billion in American loan guarantees unless the Ukraine dismissed its top prosecutor, who is seen as being lax on corruption. Biden's son Hunter served on the board of a company that had previously come under scrutiny by the prosecutor. There is no evidence that the former vice president or his son acted inappropriately. In a rare letter to Democrats and Republicans, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi warned of a whole new stage of investigation if the Trump administration continues to conceal the whistleblower's complaint.
And Paula Reid is joining us from the United Nations here in New York. And here at our table, CBS News State Department and Foreign Affairs reporter Christina Ruffini. So, Paula, let's begin with you. The administration's reasoning for withholding the whistleblower complaint from Congress, what are they saying as to why they are doing that?
They haven't released their arguments publicly, but I've spoken with senior administration officials who tell me their argument is that the president's conversations with foreign leaders cannot be subject to the opinions of whistleblowers. They argue that there's no inspector general at the White House for good reason. They also argue that this official was detailed to the White House but waited to express his or her complaints until they returned to their home agency. And they say, look, the inspector general for the intelligence community, that person doesn't have power over the president. Now, there are also executive privilege concerns. The president's conversations are privileged. He's the only one who can waive that privilege. But yesterday, he actually signaled that he may be willing to release the transcripts from these calls, which would effectively waive his privilege and really undercut a lot of their arguments here.
All right, Christina, the president is most likely going to be meeting with the leader of Ukraine. His name is Vladimir Zelensky. And they are both showmen of sorts with recent past in the entertainment industry. So tell me about this guy.
So before he became president of Ukraine, he was best known for playing the president on TV. He had this long-running sitcom called Servant of the People, in which he played this usual normal guy who finds himself in the presidency. And he was very trustworthy and honest, and that's something that appealed to voters. And when he started running, they said, you know what, we like this guy. So now you have these two men who are showmen, who are former TV stars, who are going to be meeting as world leaders here in New York. They're similar characters. They're populist people. They're populist presidents. But it was interesting. I was in Ukraine for the elections when Zelensky won, and he beat Petro Poroshenko, who's this, like, you know, politician with this machine behind him. One of the reasons he won is voters told us over and over and over again they were sick of the corruption. Ukrainians have had it with the corruption. They want an honest government, and they thought this guy was their chance. So to have this another scandal that involves corruption with not only their government but, you know, allegations in our government, it's just it's a bit ironic, and it's exactly what Ukrainians said they didn't want when they voted this interesting candidate into office.
I feel like I wouldn't put money on it, but I feel like the president's going to ask how well his ratings were. How good his ratings were.
It's on Netflix now, Servant of the People, so you can take a look for yourself.
You might not be wrong about that. So, Paula, the president's lawyer, as you know, Rudy Giuliani, went on a Twitter rant overnight, bringing up Joe Biden and his son's business ties in Ukraine. He accuses the country of laundering millions to Hunter Biden. The first question I have is, number one, is there any proof to his accusations? We just saw in your piece that there is no evidence of the accusations or the allegations that are being made. And number two, this is typical MO from the Trump White House. They get caught or something comes out that has people questioning the ethics behind a decision that was made by the president or somebody on his staff or the administration, and they pivot to asking you, the press, members of the media, the world, why aren't you looking at something else? It's sort of like, take a look at this. Don't look at what has been alleged about us. Take a look at what is a conspiracy that we just came up with. So what are they saying about the evidence? Why don't they present the evidence to the American people as to what they're alleging?
Well, let's go back to 2016. During that time, the Obama administration was applying a lot of pressure on Ukraine to root out corruption. As part of this effort, then Vice President Joe Biden threatened to withhold $1 billion in U.S. loan guarantees if they did not oust their top prosecutor, who had been accused of being lax on corruption. Now, around the same time, Vice President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, was working on behalf of a company there that had come under scrutiny from this prosecutor. There were certainly ethics questions raised about why the vice president's son would take on this role during this time, but so far there's been no evidence to prove there was anything inappropriate or illegal in the vice president's action or his son's role there. But of course, they're only re-upping this now that the vice president has become one of the president's chief political rivals. So I hear the president and his attorney Rudy Giuliani now calling for this to be investigated.
All right, so the other big story that we have been following here, of course, are the developments between the U.S. and Iran. On Face the Nation, host Margaret Brennan asked Secretary of State Mike Pompeo about evidence proving that Iran launched last weekend's attacks on the Saudi oil fields there. Let's listen to what he had to say.
No reasonable person doubts precisely who conducted these strikes. And it is the intelligence community's determination that it is likely the case that these were launched from Iran. You've seen the pictures that came from the north. That came from the north. It was a sophisticated attack. These weapon systems had ranges that could not have come from the Houthis. It is crazy for anyone to assert that they did. I mean, it is literally nuts on its face to make an assertion that this was an attack by the Houthis. This was Iran, true and true, and the United States will respond in a way that reflects that act of war by this Iranian revolutionary regime.
Okay, Christina, where are we on this? Because the U.S. had been hoping that other nations would sign on with this idea that Iran certainly was behind the attacks. Where are we?
So there are a couple different investigations going on. Some of the Europeans have sent investigators. The UN is saying they're going to investigate. But that doesn't necessarily solve the problem because, as we heard on Face the Nation, the Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Zarif said, well, we don't trust the UN. We want our own, and we want our own investigation. We want somebody we can trust. And they haven't exactly said who that is yet. The interesting thing is the U.S. will not go so far as to say definitively these strikes came from Iranian territory. They've said Iran is to blame. They've said they're Iranian weapons. But for whatever reason, they're not quite willing to say they were launched from Iranian territory, even though they say, well, the evidence points that, as you hear Secretary Pompeo said, it would be nuts on its face. There's an expression I wasn't expecting to hear this weekend. Nuts on its face to think the Houthis had done this from Yemen. So one of the reasons everyone at the UN seems to be, you okay, Vlad?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Everyone I've spoken to from the State Department, from the administration here at the UN, they're all on the same page. They are here to put pressure on Iran. They're even going to be live tweeting Rouhani and his delegation as they go around. They're going to be responding to everything he says on social media. So there are other issues to be addressed this week, but for the administration, they are here to talk about Iran, to get diplomats to line up behind their Iran policy, because for whatever reason, there is still a real reluctance to talk about a strike or a kinetic retaliation. They don't want a war with Iran.
Out of curiosity, he's really making a difference. Pompeo's sort of making a difference between Iran and Houthis, though the allegation has been from the U.S. and others that that the Houthis are sort of operating with the support of Iran. Is it significant that whether it came from the Houthis or the direction of the Houthis or from Iran?
I mean, it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
I think most political analysts would say one of the reasons that if Iran was behind this attack and they outsourced it to the Houthis, it's so they can have one step of deniability, and it makes it a little harder for the U.S. or the Saudis to just flat out attack them, because in the international community, people might say, well, you weren't sure it was Iran. It's just a little bit of cover. Whereas if the Iranians were throwing caution to the wind and just launching a strike that we could see, on our satellites from Tehran to where, that's a little more more clear, and it's a little harder not to take action against that.
Right.
So it's kind of this thing where, you know, and if you talk to the State Department, they've been saying the Iranians have been doing this for 40 years, where they walk up to the line of where the U.S. or someone might have to respond or strike back and then kind of back down again, then walk up to the line. So, you know, poking the bear and trying to fight back against these sanctions, which are crippling their economy, but they also don't want to give the U.S. an excuse to send in the Tomahawks.
All right. Paula, Christina, thank you very much.